Survivor's ready.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now would be the time to do so.
The queen stays queen.
You said rustle feathers.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
We have ripe bananas all the time.
Dude, my prize isn't even $1 million. My prize was that I fell in love in this game. Love at first sight. Her name is Candace.
You officially go down as the dumbest survivor ever.
Welcome to Not Game, All Personal Hate. We are a Survivor podcast here to talk about all things Survivor, more specifically the events of this past week. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Tony, are you hurting starting this episode? The tough one?
Yeah, my feelings are hurt. I could kind of see the writing on the wall as soon as it was mentioned. I was like, oh, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right decision. And so, yeah, it is what it is. Game's the game. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you know what happened. Spoilers always. But yeah, Kelly was put in a tough position. I feel like let's just get into it. Nathan.
Yeah, let's talk about it. That's what we're here for.
Let's dive in. Do you think that the purpose was more Drew and Austin trying to get that steal a vote or whatever to a full idol? Do you think that was like the biggest thing, or a big piece of it at least?
So you just got done watching it for the first time. I went back just now and rewatched specific scenes because I did want more context on that and other things, and they didn't bring that up at all. At all this episode.
They did. It wasn't mentioned. Definitely wasn't mentioned.
I have no idea. The biggest thing that I caught this time around that I didn't necessarily hone in on, because again, I wasn't sure Kelly was for sure going. So, rewatching it with that in mind, the biggest reason to them seemed like it was to weaken Bruce. Like, they brought up multiple times how her and Bruce were a duo, and Kelly brought up in a confessional as well, like, people are grouping me in with Bruce, and I'm trying to separate from that. So I think that's more of the reason. Now, I'm sure the amulet has to be part of that as well. But for whatever reason, it was not in the episode at all.
Yeah, and I knew it wasn't mentioned at all, but it was brought up by Drew and Austin, which made me. And right when she was voted, she looked directly at Austin and said, like, "Did you do this?" And he said, "Yeah." Which means there was something there, and she probably thought that it was. That tells me that she thought that it was because of that, because I feel like those two weren't a duo that I would have been like, oh, they're working closely together.
No.
So yeah, that's just one of those things where it's just kind of unfortunate, and like, it sucks because Jay was very much like, I want to do this, or who was it? Jay wanted to do the idols, and then Kelly was in the middle, right?
Are you talking about the sandwich situation?
Yeah. The sandwich situation.
I believe,
That's
yes.
tough.
Jay was the one that was pushing it.
I feel like I didn't even consider the idea that, like, oh, you're making yourself a target to these people necessarily at that point. And so she should have gone sandwich. Like, that ultimately, I feel like, was the decision. If she had gone sandwich there, they're good, I think. Sure.
It's definitely a full arc for Austin. Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it's brought up later on. Because it can't not be a deciding factor in some ways. Because, I mean, now he's sitting here with two full idols, which is, I mean, without question, there's Bruce's idol, and I think that's it as far as advantages go. I'm double checking now, but I mean, that's powerful. That's huge.
Yeah. I usually have it pulled up. I do not. That reminds me. I need to have all the info pulled up.
Yeah.
But yeah. Kelly's still my favorite player of the season. I would love to see her come back. I think she was. I don't know. Do you think we saw enough to really say she was a strong player?
It's so hard to tell. Because I think having her out now, I think in hindsight, what we, or at least what I was describing, was more of like the potential of a strong player. And so I do wonder, like, did we see enough to have that all play out? Because I think, like, the things she was saying, the people she was aligning with, she was setting herself up for the long haul. But yeah, I do wonder, like, did she do enough to be like, okay, she's one of the greats, or like she is one we need back? Because, like, personally, yeah, I would like to see her back. But I think it's going to be interesting to see some of these other players once they do make bigger moves. Like, how is she going to be remembered in the context of this full season?
And it also brings into to question, which I feel like is something I haven't considered a ton in the past, like how much of her getting voted out tonight was her fault necessarily. And yes, she
Mm,
decided to align with Bruce, but also she was in a tribe with him early, and they had a good alliance. But the issue was that Bruce was saying that she's close with him, and Bruce was like so gung ho about that she wasn't, and wasn't able to really separate herself. And then
yeah.
also, I think that the amulet was a big part of it, and so yes, she decided to go with the amulet, and so it's like such long ago decisions that have just like led to this point where it's like, oh, let's just go with her.
Mm-hmm.
That make me wonder how much it's her fault. It's definitely her fault, and like you can't take away blame necessarily, but it's an interesting question when it comes to like luck and how the game develops.
So here's my biggest observation, and here's my a question with that observation. I'm thinking I'm landing on the side that she might have made a mistake last week and probably should have voted out Bruce last week. What
Mm,
are your thoughts on
hmm
that? I'm putting you
So
on the
that
spot
she
here.
was on the
I've
tribe
had
that
time to
voted out.
process this one. They voted out
Yeah. So
Sifu, and
they voted out
she
Sifu.
was a big because Kendra was up for voting out Bruce, and Kelly was kind of the one that reined it
Mm.
in and said, no, 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 let's all vote Sifu.
Yeah, it's tough for her to be like, no, let's vote for Sifu, and then be the one that's complaining that she's so connected to Sifu. So I think that's fair. I think that would have completely changed the outcome of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Sifu being in the game would have been interesting. I think ultimately, though, it boils down to for me like the core four of the Reba tribe are a force to be reckoned with. Like they're kind of scary. How much they
Yeah.
want to work together and how close they are. And they got that close without having to prove their allegiance. Like we've always said, that's a huge part of it, going to tribal and proving that. This this might be the first vote that they've all. No, I guess the
Well, they kind of
mergatory vote.
voted together, but in pockets and a way. And I would even,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can confidently say, I think like Emily's definitely a part of that now too. You know, I
hmm
think that's the other aspect of it because she had a couple, she had at least one tribal with Drew and Austin. You know, so it's like the
hmm
five of them. Yes, I think you're right. Like this was the first one where they're all together and seemingly all vulnerable. Um,
hmm
yeah, I think my biggest breakdown of this is that I think the original Bello tribe, the Blue tribe, I think they had this idea that it was things were much more fluid than they actually were. You know, and
hmm
that was their mistake. And the
hmm
bigger mistake was within that is that I don't think they had what it takes to be Bello strong. Where Reba actually had that. And I think Reba was smart by picking off the people that they were iffy about, you know? Like they specifically they are the ones that targeted Jay. They were the ones that were like, yeah, let's go Sifu, you know? So now
hmm
that they got rid of their like kind of trimmed the fat in a little way, now they have their core. And I think Bello's issue is that they didn't think that way. They're like, "Oh, look at things are fluid. They're voting out their people." But like, no,
hmm
no, no, that is all intentional, you know? So I think that was the biggest blind side for them. I think the interesting thing is where do they go from here? Because let's be honest, they're not going to be Bellow strong. You know, like obviously we know Katura and Bruce have a thing. Kendra is almost just as done with Bruce. Jake's kind of on the outs. Like all four of them were blindsided tonight
hmm
or last night, depending on when you watch the episode, I guess.
Yeah,
So
or 2 nights ago.
I like it's hard to view a path forward for any of them because Reba's sitting real strong.
Now, the preview showed Reba being like, "Oh, D wins no matter what, so you have to get rid of her." I genuinely, there's no part of me that thinks that D's gonna go next week. That's just how my mind operates. I feel like that five is gonna stick together for at least another vote or two.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only hope that one of the Bello people can have is that they're the last Bello person, and they're just enough numbers to take a shot at somebody else in the group. I think
Yeah.
there's a good chance that no one from that five, Reba plus Emily, goes until how many people are left in the game right now?
There are
One, two,
9
three.
left.
I think seven. I think seven's a great chance for two of the five to like take a shot at one of the other ones. And so I think there's going to be two more, probably Bruce and then I don't know who it's gonna be. Maybe Jake, and then I feel like then the flip is gonna happen if a flip is gonna happen.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Because especially like the way they were talking, it's like, okay, cool, Kelly out, tonight, and then next week we can decide between Bruce or Jake,
Hmm.
So yeah, but it's just, I don't know. I think like we've mentioned it before in the strategy of like it's good to go to tribal early on, or maybe at least once just to kind of see where everyone's at, and the fact that
Hmm.
Blue didn't have to do that. Uh, some of them never voted until like last week. That really put them in a weird position where, they have Blue members targeting Jake. You got
Hmm.
Jake, who's, not. So it's like you didn't have time to build that up. And I think Red did it in a way that is so unique and strategic, more so than we've ever seen before, you know?
Hmm.
And I don't know. I just can't get over the fact because they had everyone fooled.
They're genuinely impressive. It's a genuinely impressive alliance.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I mean kind of like you said, like built up on not necessarily them going to tribal. So
No.
they just have that trust with one another. Even though I mean like you think early on like it didn't feel like they did. There was the whole, Austin and Drew digging and then Dee and Julie
Hmm.
catching them, but like somehow they're all
Hmm.
here and they're just doing it.
Yeah, I think even being in different tribes and voting together in the little blocks that you mentioned a little while ago, where you might have Austin and Drew vote together here, or Dee and Julie, or a mixture when it was what was it Julie, Austin, and Dee on a
Yep.
tribe, or one of those splits.
Yep.
Like even just that is enough to be like, okay, yes, they're at that point they're solidifying those alliances in a not like all together way, but they are solidifying them. Um, and yeah, I think. Do you think? So they're very good. I think we both agreed. Reba, they just have loyal people who are sticking together and therefore really just running the game at this point.
Yeah.
Do you think Bello is that bad, or do you think it's just the effect of playing with a player like Bruce? Because
I
to me,
think
Bruce feels like the core of the issue there.
yes, I do think so. I think Bruce is the core. Because again, I'm gonna place most of the blame on Kelly going out on him.
Hmm.
Mostly because they mentioned it 3 times in this episode that
Yeah.
that was why. That's the strategy. It's like, well, I can't take him out, so let me take out. Which was interesting because that was also the logic of voting for Jake. Like we can't go for
Hmm.
Bruce. Let's go for his number one. Kelly not realizing like, oh wait, I'm perceived as his number one. uh,
Yeah.
so I think there's that aspect. I think it's very clear that Bruce is not an easy person to work with,
Hmm.
cited by practically everyone in this season at this point. Maybe
Yeah.
Jake. I think Jake's the only person who hasn't audibly said that at this point.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's just like, and I think Bruce is the way that he manages like tribe life. He's just such a, like a one-track mind that I don't know if he is even open to this metagaming. I think he's just like, okay,
Hmm.
Bello's strong, let's go. Oh, this person's a problem, we'll take him out. Where Reba is so much more evolved in the way that they play the game. So yeah, I mean, I do
Hmm.
think like the fact that he is there, it is holding back some of these other players. Where like, who knows if he's not there? I think Katura builds much better relationships with everyone on that tribe. I think
Hmm.
Kelly isn't weighed down by this decision. Like, man, this guy who really trusts me, everyone hates. What do I do? So I think that's
Because you
yeah,
want that trust. Yeah, that's the hard part for her. You want that trust. You want somebody to just put completely like have their trust in you. But doing that, like I've never thought about the fact that you have to be so careful about how you do who you do that with, because suddenly you're the person getting cut because you're their number one ally.
hmm
And I think there was the little bit of risk with Jake because everybody was nervous that he had found an idol, all that good stuff. Um, but yeah, it sucks. I miss Kelly already.
I did like the comparison. I think Drew might have said it. How they were a Sophie and Coach situation, her and Bruce. I'm like, oh,
I did like
that's
that.
that's good.
When he said that, I was like, she's going out. There's no chance you say that and you keep her around. There's no
Right.
chance.
Right, exactly.
But it's not untrue when you really think about it.
It-
I would
it-
argue
wait,
Coach is probably. I was trying to think, is there anybody comparable to Bruce in the history of Survivor? And Coach, in an interesting way, I would say, is the closest I can think because of how challenging it is to work with him.
yeah, and I think especially on Coach's that his third season at that point.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
because he did Heroes vs
South
Villains.
Pacific.
Yep. And so like that's how Bruce is acting. Like Bruce is acting like a Boston Rob type. Like, hey, you guys, I've done this before. Trust me. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something to because like even Coach I think had a little more respect from his tribe. I think like they all saw through him, but they did know like okay, no, you
Except
actually
Brandon.
did this before. Yeah, that's true. But like with Bruce demands that respect, but hasn't earned it
Mhm.
because they're well aware of his history with the show.
He demands that respect while also trying to say that he doesn't deserve any respect at this point for what
Yep.
like the amount that he played. Like he's trying to play both sides and you just can't do that.
Yeah. So I think it's a good comparison. I think obviously we're very sad about Kelly. It's the first one in your draft that went home, so
Oh yeah.
bummer for you. But I think I didn't do the math. I think you definitely won though.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
You
I
got.
do I will say early. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you got Drew and Emily, and I got to Katura. So
Okay.
even if Katura wins, the fact that Drew and Emily are still going far, it's like I don't
I'd be
think it's
surprised if one
possible.
of them went next week. Yeah. What was I gonna say?
Shoot, apologize. Threw you
No,
off.
that's all right. I don't think it was anything.
Well, if you
too
forgot,
mean.
I got other things
I was
to get
gonna
to.
say, until the immunity challenge, there was a part of me that was like, is this episode gonna be Bruce's funeral? Where it's like he's just the clear target the whole way through. And then while the immunity challenge was happening, I was like, oh, he's gonna win this. That kind of sucks. But I thought it was just gonna be like he loses his vote, and then he walked the entire thing where he could have ran and gotten more money, and then suddenly he's just voted out. I was like, dang, that's gonna suck for him.
Yeah, when he was doing bad at the reward challenge, I did have that thought, but then going into the immunity, before I even saw it, I kind of knew he was gonna win. 'Cause again, like he was the only name really brought up that day. Like I
Mhm.
don't know if there was another name thrown out. The whole storyline pre-immunity challenge was female alliance going for Bruce. Cool. That was it. So
Kind of
it's
sucks that it's that easy to predict. But anyways, it is
don't
what
say
it is.
that because if you say that too many times, the producer are gonna try to switch it up and give us a Gabler edit, and that's not what we want. Okay.
That's true.
It is
Hey, I
sometimes
called
good
Gabler
to
a
predict
couple
it.
weeks early. That didn't I though? At like final
You
7 or 6.
you
I was
had
like, I see the path of the edit communicating that he's winning this.
you mentioned that you see the path, and then I think when we did our final ranking before the finale, you had him number 2,
Mhm.
I think. So yes, you were technically ahead of people, but I don't know if you called it. I don't know if that's
I floated the idea, and I'm claiming it because there's no chance that you're going to go back and listen to see if I called it. So I called it.
it's still not nearly as impressive as when Monica predicted that Tony would win week 2 of Winners at War. That was by far the most impressive thing that's ever happened on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm pumped that I also got a prediction right. That made me feel better, but that was I'm pretty sure we clowned out. We're like, you're dumb. That's an outrageously poor take, but okay, go for it.
Yeah, and then your prediction was that Michelle would make Final Tribal, but no votes. And then
Mhm.
I said Tyson would get voted out pre-merge, but then win his way back. So that I'm not even kidding. That was the same episode. We 3
Yep.
just went off.
Just lightning in a bottle. Never again. We gave up on hot takes
Dude,
after that.
ever since every year my predictions are horrible.
I
Like the
know.
fact that two of my drafts went out pre-merge. I'm so bad at this.
Whenever we
think-
do we both won or like got placed for the pool that we would always be in, and now we just stink every year.
I think you did mention either last week or the week before that you were a little worried about Kelly, if I remember correctly. I should have looked that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And it was because of the fact that Drew and Austin wanted to get her out because of the amulet. And
Yeah.
they genuinely feel like they're the ones driving the show, driving the decisions for the most part.
So do you think they get caught at all? Or if they do, is there anything that can happen? Like, is it just going to be up to Julie and Dee if they decided to, you know what I mean? Like, what other path do they have where they don't just run the game the rest of the way?
Well, the hard part is we have the preview for next week, where it seems like they're being told that D is the biggest threat, and so even the people in the game seem to think that those two are less of a threat than D is. Um, and so honestly, I don't know that if they get caught, unless that splits the alliance. If they do go for D, if that splits everything, and then it all kind of blows up, and then it's fluid again.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't think anybody's thinking about them that way at all.
Right. And I just like, my thing is who has the power, you know? Because if it is a 5-4 split at this point, and the 4 people include Bruce and Katura and Kendra and Jake, like those are 4 people that just no chemistry of working together. So it's just, yeah, I feel like the 4 of them are just gonna try to survive at this point and try to make sure it's not them.
Yeah, anybody but me. I'll vote for anyone except for me. You got to pull out the old Sandra.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Jake at all in this episode? Because he got a lot of time. Big highlights.
Yeah,
Will he? Won't he? Go home. And then
I loved the.
crazy tribal performance. Just nothing quite
Yeah.
like it.
It was fascinating because I couldn't tell if he was intentionally just unable to talk for a little bit there, or if that was like genuinely he was just having that much trouble wrapping his head around what he was trying to communicate. But the play of being like, when I play my idol, when he said that, I was like, that's incredible. If that was like an intentional slip up to get everybody a little bit nervous, because ultimately no one changed. But yeah, ultimately no one changes their decision at tribal. Genuinely, I don't think so, unless somebody's completely off the table. But then everybody stands up and talks about a new decision, and so everybody makes up their mind, and then that's it. And so I'd like to think that they decided to go all in on Kelly because he did that. That would be fun for me. But I think that was just the plan from the beginning. And you got to try to put on some sort of a performance. But I thought it was crazy that no idol was played. Like Bruce didn't even consider playing his idol for him. Thought that was interesting. But I kind of understand it.
Well, I think it just solidifies that like Kelly probably was his number 1 in his mind. You know, like
I don't know if he would have for her though.
I think he might have. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm trying to think. It's hard to tell. Here's the question: do you think Bruce would have gone home for sure if he didn't win immunity, or do you think they would have still considered Kelly as a slowly weakening him to get to that point?
I think they would have split the vote, and Kelly is who they would have split the vote with. So when Bruce probably plays his idol, then Kelly gets voted out.
Sure. Oh, because that's I mean, we talk about that every time this happens, but like for Kelly, did she have a backup plan? Or did she just think that all these votes were going on Jake and there was nothing else, you know? Because I think like that's what I was watching some interviews of her today to try to feel that out to see, and I can't find anything if there was a plan. But to me, that's always like the biggest sign that like you should be scared of. Like, oh, so all of us are on the same page here, you know? Especially after we saw this just happen to Caleb. Like, should we not just throw 1 or 2 votes elsewhere? And so, you know, I'm guessing they discussed it, at least I would hope, and then we just didn't see it, you know?
Well, what does she see as the secondary plan? Like, are you suggesting that she throws a vote on, like, Julie or something, just in case?
Well, I'm not saying just her. I'm saying,
the idea that there's something going on, so she should have been...
I think if
like,
you
okay,
are
what's the
not
backup?
aware of a vote split, or if you're not aware of the backup, that should concern you, because other
Okay.
people are probably aware that there's a backup.
I wonder if it was a situation where everybody was just so confident that he didn't find an idol that they were like, "Oh yeah, he didn't find one. I promise you." So like we can just go all in on him. It's extremely foolish given what happened with Caleb 2 weeks ago. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like this cast is more okay with, like, comfortable with doing that. Like what they did tonight wasn't splitting the vote. That was just them flipping the vote and blindsiding her.
Yeah,
And
correct.
so it wasn't like, oh, we're splitting the vote just in case. It's like, no, we're just getting somebody else out. That's a little bit
Yep.
different. Because
Yep.
I think the plan was just 8-0 on Jake.
Yeah, but I think even for the people who did flip it, like for them, there at least is a backup plan, you know? So like, let's say
Mhm.
whatever reason Kelly susses out, she plays an idol, cool. Well then, Jake will originally go, you know? So I don't know. It's just like if you ever play Survivor, I just think you can't go into it with that mindset. It's like everyone here is on the same page. I think you should
Mhm.
always try to get a couple votes somewhere else.
Okay. I like that.
That's my thought.
Or at least ask the question, like, what's the backup? Find the person that you trust the most and say, what's the
Because
backup?
again, if no one's talking to you about a backup, I would be concerned that you're the backup. That's
Mhm.
just how it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Some other things about Jake. We got a little bit of the aftermath of last week's tribal, which again, Sifu going out didn't really play a factor in anything because everyone was on the same page about him. But we saw a conversation with Jake and Julie, and it seemed like most people were not super happy about what Jake did. Bruce kind of like had a talk with him as far as like, hey dude, what are you doing? Come on, that was stupid of you. Kelly had a confessional, and then Jake kind of carries that because like even at the tribal council, he's brings it up as far as like this big move versus like playing it safe kind of mentality, you know. So I don't know. I'm just like very curious because then Kelly kind of even clarified like, yeah, it's like this line you have to ride, you know. And I think we talk about that all the time. It's like I think big moves are good, but only when they actually can like get you somewhere, you know. Like
Yeah.
I think there's like a time and place to like play it safe, and there's nothing really wrong with that. So I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on his kind of logic walking through that as far as like being upset that people were playing safe until they didn't last night, I guess.
Yeah, they did make a move. That's absolutely fair. Um, I guess I don't have a ton of thoughts on what he said. I feel like, yes, I feel like I just agree with what you kind of said, where yes, you should make some big
Perfect.
moves, but yeah, there has to be a path forward. I know you tossed it over to me. I was like, crap, I have nothing to say about this. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think my
Um,
another question I have, because like
yeah.
the thing that stood out, because I mean, his reaction to Kelly being blindsided was amazing. I don't know if you caught all the, I mean, when he just
Whoa.
he goes,
And
whoa,
then
sorry.
realized how
Whoa.
upset she was, and then he was like, whoa. And said quietly.
Well, when the votes kept coming, he makes a comment. He goes, "Oh, nice, people are playing smart," and that really like got my brain like rolling. Of like, people are playing smart. Like, obviously, you're gonna say that because it's convenient to you. You know what I mean? Like, the votes are going not on you, so you think people are now playing smart. I think it's just fascinating because I think anytime someone's on the bottom, they're just itching for people to make a big move, right? It's like, guys, come on, switch it up. What are you doing? But then once you're on the top, that's when you're wanting to play it safe, you know? So I just think like this idea of like big move versus playing it safe and like people playing smart, according to Jake, you know, it's just like such dependent on like your perspective of like where you are positioned,
Definitely.
you know? So like now that Jake is safe, now is he going to be in this, you know, like he probably doesn't want people to mix it up next week, right?
Because next week the target is Bruce, so he wants to play it safe and just vote for Bruce. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to risk it flipping to him. Yeah, okay. I see what you're going for now. I'm in for it.
There's just a lot of thoughts coming through me.
Yeah, definitely. Because like, yes, I agree. I don't still don't have anything
Great.
super additional to add.
That's fine. Should we talk about?
I would ask. Do
Yeah.
we think this week taking out Kelly was a big move?
That's a good question. I think it depends who it. I think for Drew and Austin, for example,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not so much. I would say more so for Emily, Julie, and Dee, only because they were a part of that original conversation of like an all women's alliance. So for them to kind of flip the script, I think this specific, like I think Drew was the one who technically said Kelly first, but in that aspect, he's just voting for someone he's not working with. For the three women, they are flipping the vote of a play. So I don't know. I would give more credit to them. I think of this being a
Okay,
big move.
yeah, I think that's fair. I think I would also give those two probably. I was gonna say those two, Drew and Austin. It was a bigger move because now they have a full idol. Well, Austin has a full idol, so I would say it's a big move for him. But I
Sure.
see what you're saying there because my initial reaction is like it's a big move because we like Kelly and think she had a lot of potential to be a really strong player, and I think she was considered a strong player in this game. But you're shifting the target from one person who's not in your lines to another person who's not in your lines. So is it actually a big move to not take a shot at Jake when he's at the very, very bottom?
Yeah.
I think it's questionable,
I
but it
think
all depends on how you frame it.
I think the other way to look at it too is you look at who is going to be a risk for me and my alliance moving forward. And so I think
Mhm.
like if you're aware of like this all women's alliance forming, yes, Emily told you about it, but could they change their mind and eventually team up? You know, like if we vote out Jake tonight, does that mean like next week you'll reassess with Kelly? Because I think like Bruce isn't a threat in the way of you know where he stands with everyone. Even
Mhm.
like I said this about Katura before too, but like the fact that she has such a public target, she's almost less of a threat to you because you have a good feeling Bruce is always going to be a target before you in her mind.
Mhm.
And even like with Kendra and Jake, like I don't know, like you're not worried about Dee and Julie starting an alliance with Jake. You
No.
might be worried about Dee and Julie starting an alliance with Kelly. So to me, it makes more sense. Like let's get out the person who has more potential to mess us up.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would agree with that. And that's kind of what I was saying. Like she has the most potential to be a strong player. So in that way, it's a strong play. But yeah, I don't. It wasn't. It didn't mix things up the way that I feel like Jake actually wanted them to.
No,
Like if you want,
yeah,
it wasn't a it was like a good move. It was a solid move. It's maybe
because
slightly
he's still
larger
on the
than
bottom.
average. Yeah,
Like he wasn't included in this. You know.
an interesting big whoop move would have been all the guys turning and doing like targeting the girls and starting
Sure.
that war. That would have been an interesting shot and a big shot, and I think that that's more what you're looking for when you're in his position.
Yeah.
Not
So basically,
just
what you're saying is we need more all male alliances, right?
nope, not what I said. It may
Okay.
have sounded like that's what I said, but that's not what I said. A move big enough to shift his position from the bottom of the tribe.
Yeah, and the only thing that could make a big move is like all guys. You know.
It
You
was a
can't.
suggestion of an
Can't.
option based on the current dynamics of the game. Ya prick.
I understand. Okay.
You
For sure.
suck.
Can we talk about the Survivor auction?
I don't know. I feel like they patted themselves in the back enough in the episode that they were bringing back the Survivor auction.
I think they did plenty to be like, look at us. Isn't it so cool? We're bringing back the Survivor auction. You like how excited is everybody? Let's do a little montage to show you the past of the Survivor auction so you can see how great it was. And we haven't done it in 8 years, guys. 8 years. Isn't that crazy? And you get to do it. But we're doing it a little bit differently. Don't worry. No advantages. Like, get over yourselves. You could have done this for the past 8 years. You chose not to because you thought it wasn't valuable. If you really wanted to do it, you could have found a way to do it sooner. It's just a stupid way to pat themselves in the back.
I did not see this coming at all. This
It
is
was
one of
just-
the most
It was
surprised
the
I've ever
montage.
been.
It was the montage of like, look at the past. It's the Survivor auction. And then all of the things where it's like, oh my gosh, the Survivor auction. We get to be a part of this. It's like, golly.
So, did you like it at least? Or
Yeah, I thought it was
Oh,
great.
okay,
I enjoyed the
okay.
Survivor auction.
Got it.
I hated how proud
Yes,
of
I
themselves they
understand.
were.
Okay, sure. Got it. Okay. Fully understand. Yeah. Well, anyways, do you want to talk about it or do you just
Yeah, let's talk about. We can
Okay.
talk about it. I just wanted to get that rant
I
out
like
of the
it.
way.
I
right
like
away.
it.
Waiting
So
for you to mention
so the things that they did change. uh, like you said, no advantages. Which I think was the biggest reason they didn't do it for a while. Is that correct?
that.
Because
Mhm.
Worlds Apart, Mike kind of broke it by just saving all his money for the advantage, and then
Not Mike. What was her name? Shireen. Shireen.
yeah,
She was like, "Oh, guys, if we only bid $20 for the advantage, then Jeff will offer everybody or like the note from home. Then Jeff will offer it to everyone for the same amount. They do this every season. It was stuff like that,
yeah.
and then
Okay.
saving the money. Yeah,
I just remember, I think Mike almost backed out, right, of like doing the note so
yeah.
he could have it
Mike
for
was
the
the last one in
advantage.
line, and he started to walk away and just crushed his social game, and
Yep.
then had to do his thing for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So this one was all food, nothing else. That was kind of like the bigger twist. The other one was the fact that they all had to find their own money, which left Bruce with nothing. And then they was a limited amount of dishes, which was a random number decided by Jeff drawn out of a bag. And finally, if you had the most money at the end, you don't get a vote, which was Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Bruce. No
Mhm.
food. Least amount of money at start, and then ends
He
with
had
the
some
most amount of
cake.
money. He did get some cake. That's true. Yeah.
I think so in theory I like the idea that there's a risk to being the one that holds on to your I don't know if I like the idea of that. I like the idea of everybody having different amounts and maybe the fact that there's like you're unsure of how many rounds it's going to be and it's a set amount going into it. I think what I didn't love is it just became this game of after the first couple at least whoever had the most amount of money would just be like I'm taking whatever's there because I'm nervous that this is the last one.
Yeah.
And that's not super interesting because it's just doing that over and over. I almost wish that they knew the set amount of rounds. Maybe that would have made it better so that they could have played the game a little bit more, hoping that something good would come.
Yeah.
And then the last round would have been the person with the most money just laying it down for sure. But I don't know. Maybe there could have been some sort of advantage. I think it needs to be fixed a little bit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because I don't even know why it does need to be like a random amount that you don't know, or you need to lose a vote. You know, because it's not like because they wanna punish the person who has the most money at the end, but like, why is that a bad thing? I guess like if the auction ends and you walk home with $80 but no food, like, do you need to punish
You already
them
got
more?
no food.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what and I think what it did is the last few rounds were so boring because
Mhm.
no one was bidding on things they wanted. It was just like, hey, this might be the last round. Okay, here's all my money. Okay, this might be
Mhm.
now next person all my money. Next person all my money. So
Exactly.
it just was an order, and whoever had the most money was going to go next. So like you could have counted, okay, Bruce is going to be number 5 in this pecking order. So you could have counted like how much. Yeah, so it was just like not exciting. Like I want to see people bid. I want to see people like, fight over this stuff, and it led to this
Mhm.
very like, hey guys, let's just all get on the same page and let me automatically do $600 on this thing because I don't want any money left over.
Yeah, I wonder if it's better if I feel like if they just did one of the things, it would have made it better. I feel like they did too much to try to add to it. They just did like everybody starts with different amounts or you have a set amount or random amount of rounds and you're not quite sure but everyone has equal money. Like just one of any of them I think could have made it more interesting.
Yeah.
But I see what they were doing. Like you had to make some adjustments. I do think there's a chance they're getting a little too excited with the risk of vote. Like I feel like
Yeah.
they're just doing it too much. Because then this is also going to the thing for next week, the preview for next week. Apparently,
Yeah.
something 3 people will lose their vote for the next one.
That's
Like,
so
can we
many
just get-
people.
Can we just get one challenge, one tribal where everyone votes?
Uh-huh.
I don't think we've had that yet.
Yeah. No, we haven't
I really
because
don't.
we weren't merged until last week. And
Yeah.
then we split off, so,
So even then, yeah. And so that's been frustrating, I think, a little bit.
No, I completely agree. They're obsessed with taking away votes. Such a weird thing. Well, I think that's the only place to go because they're giving too much power to people. Even though there's oddly been not
True.
a lot of advantages this season. compared to the past 4, I would say.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you look, Drew. It's worth noting Drew's safety without power expired at this tribal,
Oh,
so he no longer
yeah.
has it. So now it's just Austin with 2 idols and then Bruce with 1. So, like, that's not a ton of advantages in the game right now.
Mhm.
But a lot of votes gone. A lot of votes are
Yeah.
missing.
A lot of votes. A lot of votes that they're just taking away. And I just, it gets because then there's also the people that are always, like, Shot in the Dark is working this year. And I think that's fine for the most part. I like Shot in the Dark as a concept because it's constantly, you're always nervous when you're voting for somebody because of the 1 in 6 chance. Now that it's succeeded a couple times too, I think people will be even more scared of it.
You would think, but then they decide to put all their votes on Jake and don't plan a backup, so.
True. But I do, all in all, I do enjoy the Survivor auction. I don't think it's perfect. I think there's ways to improve it further.
Yeah.
And so I hope they can find those ways.
Okay, here's what I want to do.
Ooh, I didn't want to. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
on the
do it.
auction still.
Yeah.
Thought of it.
On the auction still.
I think I don't hate the idea that you could lose a vote in the auction, but what if it was like, hey, you can have this one slice of pizza for what you just bought, or you can lose a vote, but you get all like the entire pizza. Like questions like that, or like your ward can be larger, but you have because in the past, like you risk losing a vote to get something better. And in
Mhm.
this situation, it's like Bruce was just, he never got to bid on anything. He didn't get to do it. He just sat there the entire time and then
Right.
lost his vote just because of where he was in the sequencing. And that's just tough.
Yeah, it was more of just a punishment for not participating in this like physical activity that required finding, which is
Which he kind of deserved. Like you should, you don't want to be the one, like everybody's going to look at you bad if you're just like moseying around. It's like, dude, play the game if you want to be here. Jeez. But yeah,
And
I think
he did
there's
eventually.
interesting ways. There's interesting ways you could do that, or it's covered. And when you uncover it, it's like, you lost your vote. Like something like that would be interesting. I wish.
Yeah.
I think it'd be. They should find another punishment other than losing your vote, though. They should try to do that.
Maybe you have to go to tribal council blindfolded. So you
Yeah.
just sit there the whole time, just not being able to see anyone.
Or you just
People
don't
start
get
whispering,
To go
you don't get to
Ooh.
see.
You don't get to go to tribal,
Just vote with everyone.
so you're safe, but you just don't get to go. No,
So safety
'cause
without
that's
power.
an advantage. That's basically what it'd be. But but safety without power, you
You-
leave before the vote. If you miss the entire conversation at tribal, is that
So you
damaging?
don't. I think once the challenge is done, it's like Exile Island type situation. But then you
Mm.
come back and vote without having any conversation at all. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
a
time to
punishment
vote.
like that.
Tony, come
Yep,
in,
okay.
place your vote, and you're like, oh my gosh, where did people strategize this after?
You're like looking like, who am I voting for? Yeah, that would be a good punishment.
Yeah,
Something
I
like that.
Uh-huh.
hmm
You vote for the wrong, just complete wrong person, and
Yeah.
one vote for Emily. It's like, what? I thought that's what.
That's what I thought we were gonna do.
Just assumed that would happen next.
Yeah, I think they could get more creative with the punishments and the hard parts of that. I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay. I want to bring back. I don't think we talked about this last week, but 2 weeks ago we brought up a tier ranking of these players.
Ooh,
You remember talking about that?
I do.
Okay. I don't know why I didn't bring it up last. I wrote it down. I went back and listened. We're not doing so hot because we both had Caleb and Kelly in top tier and they've gone since. Sifu was in the bottom tier and he is gone, so we did good there.
I think we're correct because they were in the top tier. You vote
Okay.
people out that are in the top tier.
Sure, but by that logic, our bottom tier was Bruce and Kendra, so are one of them going to win the game?
No.
So, what I wanted to I want to go through and adjust our current tier ranking, okay?
Okay.
So, I think this is what I want to add some rules to this. Since there's 9 players,
Oh boy.
I want 3 in each tier, so top, middle, and bottom.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
So, we do have 3 people left in the top tier. It's Emily, Austin, and D. Those were our 3 top tier.
Okay.
Middle tier, we have 4, so we'll have to move someone at either way. we had Drew, Julie, Katura, and Jake. And then the bottom tier, Bruce and Kendra. Now, I think we kind of talked about like the parameters of how we're defining this, but I think it's more so just like who do we see that has a path to get to the end and win, right? Like just as simple as that. How are they positioned in this very moment? So let's start with the bottom, Bruce and Kendra. Do you think they both should still be there? Do you think since we last talked, there's something there that we should move one of them?
I think they both stay. I think for Bruce, he's just become the like group target, essentially. And so once he's available to be voted for, I find it hard to believe that he won't be voted for. Things will get interesting if he uses his idol and survives, though. So I think that is worth thinking about. Like, will that be enough to get him to stick around for a while? Who will he take out with that? So I think that'll be interesting for sure. But I feel like nobody wants to keep him around.
Yeah. And I think even if he gets to the end, like, will he have the jury? I don't know. Yeah, so I'm good with those two. Was there someone from the middle tier that we feel comfortable bumping down out of Drew, Julie, Katura, and Jake?
I think Jake is tough just because he is so connected to Bruce. I think he was kept around not because... I think it was because of the potential that he had found an idol, not because he was in like a great position or like people wanted to work with him. So I think he would drop down for me.
I am perfectly fine with that one.
Now,
Jake, you're going down.
the interesting one.
Yeah.
So right now we have
you want to bump Katura up to the top tier, right?
No. I do think so. Well, I mean, we can have that conversation if you want to have that conversation.
No, I think middle's fine right now.
Okay, cool. I think Drew is worth being in the conversation for that top tier.
He moved up in my head a little bit more because I've been pretty low on him the past few weeks. I just don't know of those three who I would swap him with.
Seeing the way that he communicated with Emily, I think was huge. Like somebody that is in his alliance, seeing the way that he's like, yes, absolutely, we're together. Like, I'm so glad that we're working together. Like seeing, because we had seen the at sides where he was just like, no, I don't want to do that with Brando so long ago, where it was just like, that was kind of a cold way to handle that. And he has himself a good alliance, and I feel like he's not somebody that people are really threatened by.
I think my issue with both him and Emily, they're literally just both robots learning how to have emotions. That's what the two of them are.
It feels like it, yeah.
It's just matter of fact. Oh, no, here's the logical decision. This is what we should do. And even like Emily did it again when Kelly got voted out, where she just like looks like, you were a good player, but like doesn't even give any, like, it's so forced. I think that's my biggest issue with both of them, where it's like, if they make it to the end, how do they tell a story of how they got there? Because I don't know if the jury will be with them. Because I don't know. Kelly kind of went home a little upset.
Yeah, which we should talk about that a little bit. I think more because that was tough to watch. But we'll finish this conversation first. Yeah, they are pretty robotic. I do think that gives them like, I think of Big Brother and I think of Steve, from Big Brother 17, where he was very robotic, I feel like, the entire season, and then just delivered and sorry for the Big Brother spoilers, delivered an incredible speech that like laid out his game extremely well because he knew what they were looking for and what the merits were to win. And so I feel like those two will be able to lay out their game super well. The question is, are they making social bonds with people that would be significant enough for them to win anything?
Yeah.
I feel like Emily has the story, and so as long as she can tell that story, that's a good spot to be in. I think the person that I would...
Yeah, go ahead. That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, the person that I would swap with Drew, and it's hard to do this with somebody who has two idols, but I just feel like Drew is the one that's driving them strategically more than Austin is. I think Austin's a part of the conversations, but it's always Drew that we see in a confessional. Austin's in confessionals talking about sandwiches. And he could win the game being that guy who just like, oh, whatever, I care more about a sandwich. We've seen that before.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't see long-term Austin. I don't think I see Austin winning the game if he hits final 3.
I think I agree
I don't-
with that. I think Drew has more of the winner energy, but
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily like right now. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like we said that the first 2 weeks, like we're watching him, we're like, man, this guy has winners at it all over him, right? Like the things that he's saying in the confessional, the amount of screen time, he's kind of the voice of his tribe. And I think these other people like D and Austin kind of were more of a slow burn that eventually like, oh, there's something there with them. Oh, they're becoming threats. So I don't know. I think like Drew does make sense, but it's just hard because I think you're like him and Austin just they're doing the same moves, but with like different intentions and in different ways. And it's fat because like you're right, like Austin, like if the two of them sit in the end together, that's a fascinating conversation. Like, do you give the
Yeah.
person who was maybe a little more physical in challenges, who got all the advantages, who played this vindictive, like my sandwich, I'm getting you out, or do you vote for the person who was like strategic, who formed these alliances, who you know what I mean? Like those are two very different games that we have seen. We've seen both of those win at different times in the history of the show. So I would love to see that.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see those two go head to head because they are so vastly different. But for this purpose, I trust Drew more to be the one that's at the end there.
Okay. We'll swap them then. I'm fine with that one. And I'm making
then-
marks of this. I'm making notes so we can see week by week how this adjusts. So
So
basically,
top tier we have D, Drew, and Emily.
yes. Yep.
Middle tier then.
Austin, Julie, and Katura.
Okay.
Then bottom is Bruce, Jake, and Kendra.
There's a part of me, and I realize that we can't do this based on the rules that you laid out.
The made up rules that I set forth, yes.
Is like put Katura in the bottom tier too, just because those
No,
four are
no, you're
they're
crazy.
so far. There's so much at the beck and call of the other 5. The other 5 are so clearly in control. But that's it's nothing towards Katura at all. It's legitimately just the positioning in the game. I swear.
No,
That's
you're
genuinely
right,
where
you're
it's coming
right.
from.
I think why I feel good with her up there is because I think of those 4, I think she has the highest chance of surviving it.
Okay. I was gonna ask that. I was like, do you really think Katura is in the position like the highest?
Well,
the best
I mean,
chance of
let's look at
surviving?
it. Like Kelly went home partly because of her allegiance with Bruce. Jake is part of that conversation. They're not going to vote Katura for that reason. That's a fact.
And they had the conversation with Katura like they were pulling her in.
She will not be voted out because of her relationship with Bruce. That's for sure.
True. That's for sure.
So
Unless it's by Bruce.
of those
When he plays his
4,
idol.
of those 4, I feel the most confident with her. And again, like I didn't see anything this episode to like I've been higher on her this season, but like this episode I think was the first time where it's like, oh, there's almost nothing, good or bad. Like at least last week she made a move worth discussing. I think this week it was just like, oh, she's just kind of there now. So I'm not really feeling like winner from her like I was at one point, but
We
I
saw
don't
the
know.
conversation of like Drew being like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" and her being like, "Let's go for Bruce," and him be like, "Yeah, absolutely, we'll do whatever you want," and like them pulling her in. I think that's huge. I think that gives her a leg up for sure.
Yeah,
I do
it's just a
think
bummer because they
Kendra-
didn't actually pull her in.
True, but I think that's because it was going for Kelly. I think if it was
Sure.
Bruce, she would have been looped in for sure. But since it was somebody that she might have been close to, they decided not to.
Mhm.
And you could spin that as like, hey, she would have been mad at you if you took that shot at her with us, so we helped you with a potential jury vote in the end. You
Sure.
could absolutely spin that. I do think Kendra. I could see Kendra being the one that survives. I'm not advocating for her swapping with Katura on her tiers necessarily, but I could see it. I could see Kendra just being the one that honestly they're not worried about. She seems pretty happy-go-lucky. They seem to enjoy being around her a decent amount. I think she's a bit much, but that's just me.
Sure.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's an argument for her being the least threat and the most likely to last the longest.
No, I think you're right there. I think there's a good case, which again is interesting because it's like you could go home because you're not a threat, or you could go be home because you are a threat. So I think like both help you at different times in the game, which is why this show is fascinating.
Like I'd say she's the most likely goat in the game right now, based on the game so far. And so there's an
Yeah.
argument for getting her out because somebody might take her to the final 2 instead of you, or final 3 instead
I
of
think
you.
with that thought, because I agree with that, I think she is probably the GOAT right now in this moment. But then I think that does put her in the bottom of our ranking because it is a matter of like do
True.
we think they can get to the end, and do we see a path for them to win? And so
True,
if we're
true.
saying she's the number one GOAT, then I think that answers the question. At this moment, she sits next to anyone else, they win.
Yeah, that make. No, do I think if Bruce gets to the end, do you think Bruce wins?
It really depends, but I don't think he'll have the jury. I'm sorry, I don't think Katura's gonna respect a good gameplay over her bitterness.
It's so hard because it could go both ways where it's like you were such like a threat and somehow you survived this long and therefore you deserve it, or you don't deserve it because no one wanted to work with you because you're bad at the game and so we're not going to vote for you. So
Yeah, well, I think too it's how you spin, because I think like he won immunity this week, which is huge. But besides that, like, is him staying in the game due to his own gameplay? I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would look at last week and be like, oh, he stayed in the game because he worked for it. I think he stayed in the game because Kelly didn't want to make the move.
yeah, Kelly was nervous about it being too early.
Which,
RIP.
not talk about Kelly. All right, anyone else you want to talk about? Anything else?
Yes, I loved Jeff stabbing the bag of rice
That
and
was
making
cool.
them like make that decision quickly. Because always they're like, "Oh, will anybody else? Can we make a decision that whoever does this is off limits?" Like there's that whole all that nonsense. And Jeff's like, "I'm not here to deal with that. I'm just gonna stab your bag of rice." And watching Drew shoot out, honestly, I would say Katura to step out sooner because I would have been mad at her for taking longer when she was going to step out.
I suppose. I don't know. That's always a funny one to me because I think the logic is so. I think you're right. I think people probably will look at that like that. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
the logic should be look at the people that didn't step out. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's such
Oh
a
yeah.
funny position you're in that one. Either you want to be the very first or you don't want to do it, because if you're the
Mm-hmm.
last person to do it, that's somehow worse than the person who didn't even do it.
Yeah. I like that aspect of that immunity. I like that they do
Yeah.
that every year where it's like, we'll give you rice, but I think almost always people have all stepped out for the rice. That's such an
Yeah,
interesting layer because if she waits any longer, is it worth it for the amount of rice that they get? If you wait too
sure.
long, I don't know. It's an
I almost
interesting,
like,
interesting
yeah, I
angle.
think if you wait too long, you just shouldn't do it at all, because
Mm-hmm.
then no one has the right to be mad at you. Because then it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
look at these other, were there 7 other people or 6? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
6 other people and me.
6.
So it's like, how is this on me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then the
But yeah,
6 of
I
you
just.
team up and then vote out the 3 people who, you know.
Mm-hmm. You can just tell how much fun Jeff had with it though, which is always a good time.
Hey, Jeff's happy, we're happy. Not always true.
One more thing to note, and I'm kind of disappointed that Jeff announced this or said this on whatever talk show he was on. Apparently, going forward, I wish they had done this sooner. Anybody who quits, they're not getting their torch snuffed, which seems so inconsequential, but like that's such a big moment for big Survivor fans to actually get their torch snuffed and to stand in front of Jeff in that way. And taking that away from people who decide to quit, I love it.
Didn't he do something like this before though when people quit? I feel like this isn't. Or does he just not say the tribe has spoken or something? Because like I feel like this happened before. Like someone quits in tribal or something. And doesn't he like? I could be just misremembering. Because I
I
think I was
have to think of the
surprised.
specific scenario.
I was surprised this season when he did that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
they quit. Why are you Why are you going through all
It's
this?
been a while since we've had a quitter.
It's been a
admittedly.
it's been a minute. Probably maybe almost 20 seasons at this point.
Oh no, we've had quitters since then.
So 25 on.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google it.
All right, you go ahead and Google it. Oh, well,
I mean,
I'll
Colton
vamp.
twice.
That's true. He might have been the last one though. Do you think there's been
He
one
might have been.
since? I mean, I
Let me
think like
see.
quitting in the sense. So there was you can't count.
Technically, Sandra didn't go to Edge. Kagayan.
Oh, that doesn't count because a lot of people didn't go to Edge in the first time around.
Oh yeah, Kagayan. The girl thought that she was gonna fight Trish, so she quit.
Then there's
San Juan
kind
del
of.
Sur
I was gonna
was
say
feeling
Andrew
depressed
Savage,
at the
kind
merge.
of.
Huh?
I was gonna say kind of Savage. This kid was sick.
I don't. Was that Savage or was that Terry?
Oh, it was Terry. You're right. Savage got
Savage
idled
was
out.
voted out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How could I forget?
But that you don't blame as a quit. You just don't.
Yeah,
Looks
he
like there was one on
quit.
Edge.
Get a healthy kid. I don't know. There's one on Edge. There was
they raised Sale on Edge, so that doesn't count. But David versus Goliath was injured. She was recovering during the time she injured her MCL further. She decided to pull herself from the game to prevent worsening her because it would have affected her MMA career. So that's kind of injury.
last season, Matthew. Remember he quit after he got injured?
Oh, he did.
Do we count that as a quit?
It's tough when it's injury related.
Everything's injury related to an extent. Nicotine addiction.
So all of those.
That's a
But
physical.
It's worth noting all of those people who quit because of injury. That was never at Tribal for the most part. Like Matthew, I'm pretty sure just left from the island. Like there was no.
Yeah, he didn't
nothing
even
at
talk to
Tribal
producers.
there.
He just got up and walked away.
Yeah, people have been talking about it. Honestly,
Some say he's still out there. A little wounded
this
bird.
person quit on day 18. There's a lot of quitters, dude.
More than I thought. I'll give you that.
Nicaragua. Well, usually they're early in the game, so you never pay attention to them. I feel like.
What's the latest that someone quit? Outside of Ben from Winners at War.
Ooh, there's a thing for unofficial quits, and those are people who. Oh, this is interesting. Ben asking Sarah to. That's kind of quitting. Did you already say that one?
I did. Yes, I just said.
I thought so. What'd you ask? You just asked something, and I had an answer.
I asked about Ben.
Before that,
I asked. Oh, who was the latest that someone quit? And then I said, was it Ben?
oh yeah, oh I missed the was it Ben entirely. I think it. I mean, if you count that, I think it would also say Nicaragua would be one, because they were late in the game when those two quit.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were already merged and everything, right?
Yeah, they were merged, and I think it was like 7 or 8. They were out. Oh,
All
hurts my
right.
feelings.
Well,
Yeah, sorry. I'll stop reading.
we should wrap
Wikipedia.
this up. No, it's great. It's
Mhm.
fascinating.
Oh, wait.
What?
There's pictures of everybody quitting, and it shows if they were at Tribal or not.
All right, you want to give us a quick update then on who was at Tribal?
No,
or was
you ended out. You ended out.
All right, for more episodes, visit notgameonpersonal.com. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anyone listen to the podcast really, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, at NGAP Pod. That is at NGAP Pod. I'm Nathan. It's Tony. We'll see you next time.
45 seasons, 2 pals, 1 podcast.